Okay, so now let's talk about the seminar's organization and the timeline for today. We're going to start off by talking about forms of memory, and there are so many different variants on memory in the brain, all the way from remembering things like, how to tie your shoelaces, how to ride a bicycle, to remembering what you had for dinner last night, to remembering what you did with your childhood. All of these things actually engage different systems in the brain. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about these different forms of memory and trying to understand how they work. We're going to demonstrate how they work. We're going to test your memory ability in some of these cases and do some fun demonstrations of the such. So we're going to spend essentially the entire morning talking about the different forms and kinds of memory and how the brain is able to establish those kinds of memories. We're going to take a break at about 10:15, just a 15-minute break for you guys to get some coffee, go to the bathroom, and so on. Then lunch will be at 11:30 to 12:30, and again, I will be available from 12 to 12:30 for your questions, and I'll be right here or just outside the room. So I should be very, very clearly available to you. Then we'll come back and talk about preventing memory loss. And we'll talk about memory loss in the particular context of 4 areas: stress, mood, sleep, and diet. So we're going to talk about the effects of stress on the brain and on memory, mood disorders and their effect on the brain and memory, sleep, why is sleep important for memory? I'll talk to you about exactly what happens during that sleep process and why it's so critical, and also what happens with sleep deprivation. And some interesting insights like, as you get older, sleep quality gets worse. There's nothing you can do about it. That just happens as a function of age. But there are some things that we can do to try to sort of remediate the effects of that sleep loss. And we'll talk also about diet and the kinds of dietary interventions that one can use to enhance their memory. Some things work, some things don't work, some things show more promise than others, and I hope that this will be a little bit of a reality check, because I think a lot of people go out and they try to get supplements and they try to get on different diets. There's so many fads out there. We're going to try to make this evidence-based, and if you have questions about specific kinds of things, you can ask me, feel free, but I'm going to focus on the ones that really show the most remarkable effects. Then we'll take our last afternoon break, and then we'll talk about memory enhancement. And this will be a very practical session. And we're going to demonstrate some of these things. I'm going to teach you how to build a mind palace, which is really, really awesome and cool, especially if you've watched something like Sherlock. We're going to actually play a clip from that, and I'll show you exactly how to construct one of those mind palaces. These are techniques that have been used for a very long time. So I hope to instill some of those habits in you guys today. Let me show you some of the other effects. Now, one of the things that you should know about the hippocampus, and that's one of the reasons why memory loss happens with stress, is that the hippocampus is a stress puppy. So you have this freely circulating cortisol in your system, which is one of our stress hormones, and cortisol has no problem at all going from your adrenal glands straight to the hippocampus. It doesn't need to be converted, doesn't need to change. It crosses through the blood-brain barrier because it's a very small molecule and gets straight to the hippocampus and binds to these glucocorticoid receptors in the hippocampus. These receptors are some of the most stress-responsive receptors in the entire brain. And as a result, stress, even though it affects the entire brain, it affects the hippocampus dramatically. And here are some of the things that it changes. It makes it much more difficult for the hippocampus to learn. It reduces the extent by which you can get excitability. So raising the threshold so that it takes a lot more for the cell to be able to fire and communicate and learn new things. It makes that more difficult. It also inhibits the process of neurogenesis. Now, we all learned in school that you're born with all the brain cells that you're ever going to have, and they don't really regenerate, you don't get new ones, they just die as you get older. And it turns out both of these things are not true. Science has evolved past what we learned in school, right? Now we know that brain cells don't die as you get older, they just change. But they die in something like Alzheimer's disease, but not aging. Just healthy aging is not associated with massive cell death. But the other really important piece that we learned is that there is continual neurogenesis, even into your older age. Neurogenesis is the ability to make new brain cells. It happens only in a couple of places in the brain. One is the hippocampus, and the other one is the olfactory bulb. Now, you all know about this last one because everybody here has had a cold at some point, and you've lost your sense of smell when you had a cold, right? Now, do you remember when the cold went away? What happens? You get your sense of smell back. It's because your olfactory bulb was able to make new neurons. Well, the hippocampus is the same way. It also makes new neurons. And the only thing that makes the hippocampus sick such that it can't make new neurons is stress. Again, it's reversible, so if you remove the stressor, neurogenesis comes back, but it happens.